Hi friends, thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Dana, and if you find what I have to say interesting and or helpful, I earnestly encourage you to click the like button below or the Rumble button or the Fire button or its alternative platform equivalent. Philadelphia parents, we've been faced with innumerable challenges this year. We've been expected to bend to the will and schedule as dictated by the teachers' unions and its subsequent fallout in schools both in and around Philadelphia County. Getting our kids back to school should have always been our number one priority before strip clubs and beer distributors. Personally, I think it says a lot about where our city's priorities lay. As anyone who's been involved with municipal government can tell you, it's money, sex, and escapism that grease the hands of our esteemed politicians. But back to the topic at hand. Since I have 3 children attending a charter school in this city, the topic of mandatory vaccines has been of particular concern to me. Today's video will not be centered around the coronavirus vaccine specifically, but around the topic of informed consent and what that truly entails, as most people, even grown adults, have no idea. At what age do you think your child is mature enough to make informed medical decisions without your consent? Well, according to the Philadelphia Board of Health, back in 2007, the age is 11. That's right, friends. At a local vaccine clinic located in a church sponsored by a major pharmaceutical company, as well as religious organizations and a children's hospital, it specifically states that children 12 years and older are eligible for the shot, and quote, you can bring a parent or guardian if you want, but it isn't required. Say what? Some friends of mine and myself found this wording distasteful, and it led to an entire discussion about whether it was legal or ethical to perform medical procedures on a minor without parental consent. Someone was able to find this obscure health department initiative in the Wayback Machine. Back in 2007, the Department of Public Health added language to its regulations governing the immunization and treatment of newborns, children, and adolescents. And while I hate to bore you to death with this overly pedantic reading, I believe that the first part of informed consent is knowledge. So what I'm going to read you now are some excerpts from this. I can link it down below for you so that you can read it for yourself, but I am going to read it word for word here, boring as it is. So, medical evaluation, immunization, and treatment of minors. Minors consent to examination and treatment. A person between the ages of 11 and 18 may give consent without the approval or consent of another person for medical and other health examination, treatment, and services to determine the presence of or to treat a sexually transmitted disease and any other disease, infection, or condition reportable pursuant to the Disease Prevention and Control Law of 1955 and the regulations adopted thereunder, provided such person is capable of providing informed consent. The healthcare provider may not be sued or held liable for implementing appropriate diagnostic measures or administering appropriate treatment to the minor if the minor has consented to such procedures or treatment. Part B. Here's the part I'm concerned with. Minors consent to immunization. A person between the ages of 11 and 18 may authorize his or her own immunization without the approval or consent of another person to prevent occurrence of a reportable disease, infection, or condition, provided such person is capable of providing informed consent. A parent or guardian does not need to be present at the time the vaccine is administered. Written consent by the minor is not required, but documentation that the vaccine information statement was provided to the vaccine recipient and the publication date of the viz is required. The health care provider may not be sued or held liable for providing such immunization to the minor if the minor has consented to such procedures or treatment. Okay, so I'm sorry, that was boring. So there you have it, folks, in black and white. Your children, your 11-year-old child can consent to a coronavirus vaccine or any vaccine without your consent or knowledge. Should they have one of the hundreds of reactions that have been reported with any of the major vaccines, the parent, the caretaker, the one who would call the ambulance has no idea why her son or daughter is having a medical event in the first place. While they're there without a parent, do you think they're being provided with informed consent? Furthermore, would you know what informed consent looks like? Respectfully, likely not if you're one of the majority of people who will only ever seek treatment from the allopathic or Western medical care system. It wasn't until I began training as a doula that I started paying attention to topics such as informed consent. And when I teach it to my clients, I start with the basics. I actually bring something. It's my brand board. Brand, BRAND, stands for benefits, risk, alternatives, nothing, and D for decision. The benefits, how will this benefit me in the short and long term? The risks, what risks are inherent with this procedure or test or injection or others like it? How do I identify and report these events if I were to have them? Alternatives, A. Really, this is, I talk about this in terms of birth interventions, but in terms of coronavirus vaccines, we could say that an alternative to the coronavirus vaccine would be naturally acquiring the virus and using something like ivermectin or one of the other therapeutics that have been approved to treat it. That would be considered an alternative. N, what happens if we do nothing? And D, decision. Do I feel free, informed enough to make a decision without outside pressure? In working with over 100 families, I found strong activist feminist mothers who could not withstand the pressure the medical establishment uses to gain consent. A 40-year-old mother with a healthy first pregnancy pressured into an induction, which leads to a cesarean through a number of unfortunate idiopathic events. Another woman, she's told she can't have a VBAC. Why? Because they don't do that there. And she has to have another cesarean. And she does. But in a street fight, she would knock your ass out and take a beating too. These two women were unable to say no to their doctors, even though they knew what the evidence said. And now we're suggesting that 11-year-old children are capable of both understanding the complexities of consent and or withstanding the pressure exerted by medical staff, which at times could be likened to that of a used car salesman. Myself and my fellow parents were equally disturbed by this news, none of us having known that it was legal. Since many of us have been advocates for families in various capacities, it seems we'd be considered more educated than most. We can only assume that the vast majority of parents were also unaware. At 11 years old, I still have to tell my kid how to wash her hair, how to clean up after herself. She can't get a piercing or a tattoo. She can't drive a car. She can't drink a beer, smoke anything, consent to sex, and so many other things. But suddenly, she can consent to medical procedures that could affect every aspect of her future, her fertility, and her health in ways she can't even begin to understand. Parents, be wary of any medical professional that seeks to separate you from your children. Furthermore, I'd steer clear of any hospital, church, or institution, the science, that even encourages that behavior via its advertising. While I'm here spreading little known but utterly important facts that every parent needs to know when they're taking their child for vaccines, here are a few more. Ever since 1986, pharmaceutical companies have been granted blanket liability in the foreseeable event that injury or death occurs. As we all know, the vast majority of people who receive their vaccines will be just fine or only have mild reactions, so there's no need to be an alarmist here. Since I don't want to be an alarmist and I just want to stick to the facts, I decided to look some things up on the CDC's own website. So the CDC's very own Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, known as VAERS for you normies out there, has reported more deaths so far in 2021 than in the last 10 years combined. I'm going to say that a little bit slower. We're not even halfway through 2021. And already there have been more deaths reported to VAERS than in the last 10 years combined. Folks, I have to ask you, what is the only thing that is different about our vaccine schedule all those other years and then now? If these are things that you didn't know, what makes you think an 11-year-old does? How can he understand what he's agreeing to if they overstate the benefits and downplay or completely deny any risks? I think we can all agree there's no one medicine, food, vitamin, or medical treatment that's right for every person. And yet this coronavirus shot has been hailed by the medical establishment, corporate media, and celebrities alike as the only thing that can save us from a global pandemic. This is one of many agendas being sold to our children inside and outside the classroom. So my question to you is this: did you know your 11-year-old could consent to such a procedure without your knowledge? Are you okay with medical professionals offering medical tests, treatments, and gene therapies to your children without your knowledge? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. Parents, I just think it's time to start pushing back against these insane attacks on our parental authority. These things should no longer be considered acceptable. Just remember that sometimes the best thing we can do to push back against these insane ideologies is just to spread the information with more people. So since that comes from spreading information, if you could please share this video with other parents who you think might be interested to know exactly what the medical establishment has planned for our children. Thank you so much for your time. I hear my crazy children coming now. Bye.